everybody, today we are talking about My Year of Meats by Ruth Ozeki. So this is actually the second book I've read from Ruth Ozeki, though I believe this is her first book. And the one that I have read is A Tale for the Time Being, which I love that book so much, but I read it right before I started doing reviews. And so I plan to reread that. I really want to reread that. It was something I wanted to read again last year. It didn't happen. So maybe if I read a ton over Christmas break this year, I can read a lot of new books as well as revisit that one and then do a review on it, because what I remember from it is that I loved it. So I really do want to do a review on it and read it again. That being said, I thought if I'm reading another book by her, surely I'm going to love it as well. And this one is completely different from A Tale for the Time Being. It's a completely different subject matter, and it opened my eyes and made me think about a lot of things. And so My Year of Meats, it is a book about a documentarian named Jane. She lives in New York, but she's like half Japanese, half American, I believe. Her mom is Japanese, and she is trying to get on board of this new TV show that's going to be called My American Wife. And it's all about this idea of how American wives make really good dinner for their families. And so it's like you get to know about the family a little bit, and then you see some food that they're going to make, and it should be featuring meat because the sponsor of this show is BeefX, and they are saying beef is best, pork's okay, and so they're really trying to get you to choose one of those kinds of meats to be featured. So right from the start, Jane's not sure how she feels about this. The very first episode that they do, the way that the director, because she's not the one directing it yet, she's noticing when she's editing it and when she's in there with the other editors, that it's becoming more of like a silly thing. They're adding little like emojis, little heart, little animations, cartoon animations over certain parts of the video. They're adding things like sound effects that make it seem like kind of ridiculous instead of serious show. And they decide to do this like little survey thing at the end of the show, or in the middle-ish of the show, of the wife and the husband asking each other questions and things. And basically right in the beginning of the show, they ask like if the husband's ever been like unfaithful while they were married or whatever, and he just straight up says yes. And of course she doesn't know this, and so she's finding out about her husband on live TV, and turns out that they ended up getting divorced and like right after this because of the show. But before she knew this, they'd filmed the end of the show first, which was them kissing by like a fireside or something. And so they spun it in the episode to where all was well and she forgave him and it was all good and American families are great. And like, so it wasn't even true at all. And Jane was just like, I don't really like, this just doesn't seem like how it should be. And the whole idea of this is to show this TV series in Japan so that the Japanese women can get an idea of how to make food like American wives do, and so that they can get new recipes and start buying beef and more meats, and kind of help this BeefX sponsorship, like help this company to get more sales in Japan. And so anyway, something happens to where Jane actually has the opportunity to be the director for some episodes. And she's like, we're going to make this better. We're going to make it right. So she starts scouting for different families that she thinks are going to be really great on screen and have a really interesting backstory to really show what America is like. This might be the first one she directs. She finds this family that has like 2 of their own children and then like 10 other children that they adopted, because they believed like you only need to make a few of your own kids and then go adopt some children that are already here that need loving homes. You don't need to overpopulate. Like the mom's very much set on like, do not overpopulate. We have enough people here. Make a couple of our own children, and then we take some other children in that really need our love. And so they have a huge family, and a lot of the people that they adopted are not white, like children. A lot of them are actually like Asian, and so that makes it, Jane's like, oh, this is perfect. This will make it be related more to the audience in Japan. They'll be able to see like that in America you can also have these Asian children and these like different kind of cultures and stuff blending into American families, and they can be, we can see that kind of America too. And so basically she starts being more adventurous and more risk taking in the families that she's finding. And sometimes they do not make beef as their main thing. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's pork, sometimes it's chicken, sometimes it's something that is a little iffy for the sponsorship. And so the other half of this story is kind of in the perspective of the wife of this man who is in charge of the BeefX sponsorship. And so he has asked her to cook all the meals in the shows when they come on, watch them, give them ratings for like authenticity and all these other things to see how well they're being received in Japan. And he starts getting really angry with Jane when she starts bending things and not quite sticking to, okay, beef is best, so why are you doing chicken? That's way far off. Or why are you doing this instead? Or we should be getting a family that doesn't have so many children, or like just like little things that he's like, this doesn't really represent America the way I want it to, and you're not doing the sponsorship good enough, so get better meat, choose families that are gonna make beef. And the wife of him starts seeing these ones that Jane is directing, and she's giving them higher ratings, even though her husband, who's like, call me John because it sounds more American, he is like getting upset with her anytime that she rates something high that he didn't like. And so he's like, I can't even trust my own wife's opinion, and gets really angry at her and has a violent streak to him too. He's not a great husband. And so she wants to reach out to Jane to tell her like how I love these things. This is what I want to try to have in my life. And she's really touched by this episode that Jane does of this family of two lesbians. And this is way different. There's no husband, they're vegetarian, and so they don't even, like, there's not even gonna be beef in the episode. And they were really upset about that one, and somehow she got by barely not losing her job on that one. Like, she almost did, but she was like, this is real America TV, like this is what we should be sharing. This is a real family. We shouldn't be making things that seem like they're fake or not even true, like the first episode. And so anyway, to moving on to more towards the end and to not give too many spoilers, this book also has a lot of research into how beef is produced, how it is raised, how it gets to your stores. And there's a whole other side to this story that talks about the different hormones that are used in meat to make it grow faster, to make the cows grow faster, to make the beef like bigger portions and things like that. And all those things that seem a little inhumane and seem a little wrong and possibly crossing the line of like ethical practices and things like that, they're all explored in this book. They're all talked about in this book. They are mentioned. She does research. She actually goes to a one of the last ones that she goes to film is where they actually have a farm and a slaughterhouse where they actually do this kind of stuff and make this, like, the produce, the product. And she just starts to feel uneasy about a lot of things about this. And it just also started to make me think. Like, there was a time where I went vegetarian for a short time, just 6 months, and it really wasn't that hard. I still was able to eat a lot of enjoyable things, and it just made me realize how I don't really need meat that often to feel fine. Like, I could eat meat just occasionally and be fine. And it just kind of makes me think, well, what is going into this food that I am eating based on all this stuff that she found out. This is based in like the 90s. So, there was a lot of things like that were being discovered about how these things were being created. And it just made me think about the quality of the food and the way that it gets to that quality and me eating it. And it just kind of made me rethink a little. I mean, I'm still eating meat, but like, again, like I can go days without it, or I can choose different kinds of meat like chicken or like fish or something, you know, instead of always having the red meats and stuff that are mainly featured in this book. So yeah, it just makes you think a little bit about things you might not have allowed yourself to think about before, or that you knew about but you didn't really look into it that much. This book goes into it for you and tells you about the things that Jane was discovering about these hormones that could affect the inside of women's bodies if they were exposed to these hormones that the cows were also being fed. And so it just gives you like that part of the story, along with her documentary side of it with her friend that she ends up getting through Akiko's letters. Akiko is the woman that is married to John that watches the shows and rates them, and she really wants to meet Jane and talk more about these things with Jane that she's seeing in these episodes. And so near the middle to half of way point of the book, we get to see the two of them kind of interacting through the letters and kind of bringing these two sides that we've been reading about together, and which is really nice, which is kind of what A Tale for the Time Being did a little bit as well. We had like two perspectives going on that kind of go back and forth, and that's what this was essentially doing. Sometimes we had some other perspectives in here, but it was short-lived, and then it went back to Jane or to Akiko. So anyways, this review is getting long, so I'm going to wrap it up by saying this was a really good, insightful book. I enjoyed reading it. I wouldn't say I like it more than A Tale for the Time Being, but that doesn't mean that this is not worth reading or anything. This is still very much worth the read, and a good way to learn about things you might not have known so much about. And yeah, just a different kind of subject matter than what you might typically be used to reading. This book goes in a direction that is different than I anticipated. I wasn't really sure what the title was meaning by My Year of Meats until I started reading and realizing how that was, like, what that really meant. And I was able to learn a lot of things I didn't know about, and it was an interesting, insightful read. So if you find anything I said interesting or intriguing, go ahead, pick it up, read it. Let me know if you've read anything else from her. Hopefully soon. I actually have 3 other books from her, including A Tale for the Time Being. And so I hopefully will be getting to some of those before the end of the year, so you can hear another review of this author. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.